Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. Be joined by my co-host here in very short time. The title of tonight's episode is "Put It in Reverse, Terry," from that great, awesome viral video that went around a couple years ago. But to be able to talk about the latest news surrounding Washington, a good friend of this show, Mr. Felix Trammell. Thank you for joining me on this Sunday evening, sir. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. How you doing? It's been a little while.
Yeah, and it has been, but it's a good time for Washington because like in years past, we'd be arguing about some of the dumbest things that doesn't even have to pertain to the football field. So the fact that we're all here sitting discussing the Terry McLaurin extension, which goes into my question, it just speaks a lot about where we are right now as a full organization, as a fan base. But to get into it, with the Terry McLaurin extension, when do you think that's going to go down? And what would you predict is possibly the stopgap? What is limiting them from getting this done?
Um, I think the years is what's getting is the issue because Terry is older in the or longer in the tooth, as we would say,
Mm.
as far as NFL age goes, but his production hasn't slipped at all. So I think that's the biggest hinging point. Um, is the years. The money's going to be about the same regardless of the years. It's like just do they try to stretch it out a little bit longer that makes it a little bit more team friendly, or do you do a bigger chunk up front with the easier out, just in case? But I think that's the biggest holdup. Do I think it happens? Of course, I believe it happens. I think it happens probably right before training camp, maybe the first week of training camp at the latest. I think it gets done because I don't. It's they're not that far off. But it's just it's the nickel and dime, and this is a prime time for Terry to get an extension. So if this is the crux of the Commanders' concerns in June, then the Commanders are in a very good place.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many headlines I saw from opposing people or opposing teams saying that, oh, could they be trading for Terry McLaurin? Like, just to let you know, like that's off the table. Like, that is not happening. I saw someone on Twitter saying offering like a second round pick, and somebody else from like, are you guys insane?
Yeah, I scrolled and somebody was like to the Patriots for a second rounder and some random receiver they had up there. And I'm like,
Kendrick Bourne. Yeah, I saw that
yeah,
one.
like I'm sitting there like, it's like, what are we doing? I mean, everyone likes to stir the pot, but very rarely do these like things happen. Like that George Pickens thing doesn't happen often. So it's just one of those things that's got to work itself out. Terry's very happy here. The Commanders are very happy here with Terry. So I mean, it's not going to happen. That's not going to be much of an issue for long. So I think it's just getting the guaranteed money right in the right shape and form that both sides can agree to, and it should be done by the start of training camp.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into, before we get into some other stuff I saw online, Joe Witt's presser last week I thought was very telling in the sense of him talking about the safeties. He didn't. Somebody brought this up in our Discord saying that he didn't bring up Percy Butler in that sense, and obviously Tyler Owens could take a next step. But what would you say from your point of view? What was the biggest thing you took away from that Joe Witt presser?
Well, I think,
Marshon Lattimore, because he said
yeah,
when Marshon gets here, right?
right when Marshon gets here, and I think, and they kind of expected him not to be here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of buy-in here, but there's just going to be guys that just aren't going to come. I expect to see Marshawn this week because it's mandatory. But I think the biggest takeaway is I think Joe Witt wore a lot of the end of the season on him
Mm.
because of the defense inability to stop Philadelphia, which in hindsight, if you look at what they did to the Chiefs, which was way worse, the Eagles were on an epic roll, and I think the emotional toll just got to Washington. But you see what they revamped. The defensive line is completely revamped. They were getting bullied up front. So I think Joe Witt just took that on himself. The safety position is the one position that I'm kind of looking around like maybe there's something there that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And um, maybe there is a play for Jalen Ramsey and convert him. But I've always expected Jonathan Jones to to kind of come into that heavy safety role and kind of do that. But then it does leave Percy, and they came out with the whole he had two separated shoulders and was playing through that. And as somebody who separated their shoulder playing in high school, it was my off throwing shoulder. But I never led with the rest of the season with that shoulder. I
Mm.
protected myself in playing, and so if I do that at that level, I know at the highest level playing like that. So maybe there was some current concerns there, but as far as Whitt turned, I think he wore the loss because if you told him that we could get 24 or 22 or however much we finished with in that game, we
23.
were right there.
Yeah.
We should be right there. And there were some basic slip ups. So I think the pressure is more on him than anybody else on that staff because the defense has to get right because the offense is there. You just got to get the defense right.
Yeah, and I trust that they'll be able to do so. He has the background to be able to do that, and producing turnovers is a big thing. And that's what he brought up Quan, and even saying that he thought could take the next step, and that's what his expectation is of him to be able to get to the next level, right? He also talked about the defensive line getting longer, more mass, which makes a lot of sense given with the running efficiency last season on defense. But with OTAs, what do we take? What is obviously you played. I played as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like, what is there to take away from an OTA session, Felix? Like we all are excited. It's the middle of summer. We just want something to talk about with the Commanders. But in reality, what do we take away from OTAs?
OTAs is now in year two because year one is important. Last year's
Yeah.
important. You got a brand new quarterback, new offense, new defense, new head coach. Everything is new, so you're learning. This year, it's more on building, and it's about more building the relationship with that teammate because that's when those battles kind of happen out. You build that camaraderie with your teammates. So learning your teammates. What are my teammates' tendencies? On these type of plays, they kind of like this. Like
Mm.
Jaden learning his receivers and on this slant, they kind of like the ball here versus here. Those are those little nitpick things that show up in January, and that's the importance of OTAs. Are they really learning anything really new? No, outside of the rookies and the new and the free agents, but it's about that. It's about that camaraderie. That's why you see Frankie Louvu here. That's why you see all those vets that are here because they're building that camaraderie together. So I think that's the most important thing of OTAs. Now, are they learning this brand new revolutionary defense? No. The defense had deficiencies that they fixed with personnel
Right.
because the schemes were there and personnel let them down. So um, is that's the kind of the grand scheme of OTAs is those sort of things. You'll see a little bit more competition this week with minicamp because everyone's trying to build and start and they getting gearing that process in to get it into the season.
Absolutely. Now we're joined by my other co-host, Mr. Michael Hall. Hall, before you get into your question, I just had a question for Felix. I was searching the web, and Sports Illustrated had a proposal brought up. What would the Commanders' biggest loss of the off season? And I think it says a lot to where the Commanders are at the moment because it wasn't like they did lose a whole lot. But if you had to pinpoint it, where would you put that on?
Biggest loss?
Not you, Hall. That's for Felix.
Oh, all right. I
Uh,
was like,
all right. And this is weird, but safety and Jeremy Chin.
Okay.
And the reason why I said Chin, there was some games where his stats didn't look like much of anything. He might have had like 4 or 5 tackles, but Chin never left the field. And he did a lot of things. And tight ends really didn't have good success against Washington this year. A lot of that was Jeremy Chin. Now
Mm.
there was the play here and there. Laporta's Laporta, and what's my boy from the Falcons? He had
Kyle
one good play.
Pitts.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts had one good play on him, but they're losing a very vital piece that could do multiple things. He was a heavy safety. He could cover. He could be on the line. He could blitz. Now you're losing that, and I think you might have to replace him with more than one person in the grand scheme of things because he was on the field a lot and he didn't miss a lot. He didn't miss much time. He was very versatile. I think that's going to be the bigger loss that you're going to see. Like, in and outside of that, you didn't really lose much. Now, you could say the Jonathan Allen being traded away, but he was hurt a lot of the season last year, and other players kind of produced when he was gone. So I don't see that as big of a loss as Jeremy Chin, just because of the plays and how much Jeremy did on the field in that defense. I think that is the bigger loss, but I think he can be replaced, but it's going to have to be replaced by more than one person.
I got you. Sorry, Hall.
No, that was a good answer. Speaking of the secondary, I was like a lot of people obviously been talking about Marshon Lattimore and not being there at voluntary OTAs. Do you think that it's that big of a deal that he's missing the voluntary OTAs? Because my take on it is kind of like, would you like him to be out there? Obviously, yes, but him not being there is not going to be the reason why his hamstring doesn't stay intact this season, or it's not going to be the reason why he locks down or doesn't lock down AJ Brown, in my opinion. So, what's your opinion on the whole Marshon Lattimore thing?
100% Brian is great, but in society that doesn't happen. And I think Marshawn knows what he needs to do to get his body prepared physically. And that's what the offseason is about. He can understand the defense. As a former DB, you understand the defense. You can kind of go through it film wise. You don't have to run sprints and run 7-on-7s and run to understand your concept as a cornerback. Now he's I know he's doing what he needs to do physically, because physically he was a little bit heavier, and that contributed to that hamstring issue. First with New Orleans and then when he came here. So I know he was working on getting a little lighter to get a little quicker to help the hamstring. But I'm not that worried about it, because I expect a veteran to do a veteran's job. Now, when I see him this week, I expect him to be at full strength, full bore, and you see that, and you're like, okay, this is why they went and got Marshon Lattimore. It should jump off the screen, as you would say, when he shows up. But to really stress over it, not really. I knew Tunsil really wasn't going to be here to a veteran OTAs, because he's been in this league a long time. He knows what to do to his body to be ready at a certain point. And he will be here this week, and he'll deliver on what he needs to do.
Absolutely. My next question for you, Dan Quinn kind of talked about it in the roles of the DNs, and they were going to find the roles of the DNs, meaning with like pass rush, kind of the run stout guys, and the difference in way that they can be deployed, Felix. So, in just predicting in your mind, which players would kind of fit into those roles?
Um, you probably you got your Andre Joneses, your John Baptiste. Those guys, they're going to be your rush guys. Those are your get after the quarterback sort of guys. Um, Farrell, those guys, they're going to be more your rush ends, and that's kind of what they were doing last year. The run stopping ends. I'm sorry, though that's what they were trying to do last year, but they couldn't really hit on the pass rush. And John Baptiste had got hurt, and then they resorted to having to do Luvu a lot, rushing off the edge, which did generate some pass rush, but then you lose Luvu behind, you know? So I think that's going to be kind of how the rotation is going to go, because they really like Farrell. They really love John Baptiste, and I think he is fully healthy. From all I've seen of him this offseason, he is ready to go. And I think that is the missing piece they think they have to have consistent pass rushers. Now, they're not looking for a guy to get 15, 17 sacks. I think those guys are going to become less in the league just because of how the league is. But you need about 6 or 7 guys who can get you 6 or 7 sacks. Now, if you do that, now that gives you more versatility, and I can't always slant a line towards one direction. Now there's multiple people, so I think that platoon. I think is going to go, but I think John Baptiste is just going to be the one that's going to jump out, and I think his ability, his athleticism is through the charts, and I think that's what we're going to see, and I think he's going to become more of that pass rushing specialist that was missing last season.
Yeah, definitely gonna need some help in the trenches, especially from the pass rush. Hopefully, those guys can step up. Every year in OTAs, mini camp, there's always that the fan base goes crazy over a player. There's always that guy that everyone thinks, oh, they found a hidden gem. And then obviously you got the training camp superstar as well come August and July. But who do you think is going to be the OTA/mini camp superstar this upcoming season?
That is a very good question. I didn't even think about that because it's been such a different offseason. We're not looking for the savior. Like,
Yeah.
Mm.
but I do expect, Ben Sinnott, and I'm saying that because I think he's going to get more responsibility and he's going to get more attempts to catch the ball, which he did not get a chance to last season. I think that's going to be somebody like, oh, that's why they drafted him, and that not just a lead block guy, but he can actually catch the ball, and I think they're going to find ways to use him in a different way. And I also, as another side one, shout out to the defense, Carlin Biggers. I just like his ability. I love his toughness. I saw a lot of him, especially when he was at Louisiana Monroe. They played against the University of Texas, and everyone knows I'm a big Texas fan. He was toe to toe with DeAndre Moore of Texas, and I mean, DeAndre got a couple plays, but Carlin got a couple plays too, and he didn't
Mm.
back down. So I think he's going to be the more hidden gem, the camp kind of star. I kind of think Ben Sinnott. You're gonna see some things out of him, be like, oh, okay, that's why they drafted him, and you'll see some ability out of him. That would be my two.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I know that Ja'Cory Brooks has been talked about a little bit, and obviously our boy Amos that Bram kind of talked to us about. And that's one reason why you probably shouldn't be all that concerned with Lattimore not being there, specifically because this would allow Amos to get more outside time just to be able to see what you do have in the young man. But look, I mean, everyone's going to point in issues, and I see some of them. But to wrap this up, Felix, I only have a couple more questions for you. I know that Hall kind of talked about the training camp kind of stand out. But for OTAs, what are you hearing around from your friends and colleagues in the team? I know you're going to be there next week, but what have you heard so far from the OTA standouts?
I'm hearing a lot of Jaylen Lane, and
Mm,
I think it's and all the Tech fans should be excited. But I'm hearing a lot of Jaylen Lane, just his ability. Like you think of Debo Samuels, you think of more of a physicality. Right? Jaylen Lane can move, and I mean he can move with some intention. And being in that offense where there's so many things to worry about. Terry will be there, and Debo will be there, and Ryan Robinson, and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, oh look, there's Jaylen Lane. And I think in Cliff Kingsbury offense, but just his mindset, they're going to find plays for him. Kind of how De'Ami Brown came out that second half of the season into the
right.
playoff run. That's going to be the Jaylen Lane role, and you're going to see some things out of him like, wow, I didn't know that. But I'm sure the Tech fans will tell you it's always been there. But I think he's the one I've been hearing so much about, and I've heard a lot on Amos because just his confidence. Cornerback is such a confident position. You have to be mentally strong to play cornerback because you're out there by yourself, and you can always end up on that highlight, but then you always could be the highlight too. So I a lot of people speaking to him, just his confidence, his strength, just his athleticism. He's gonna be a good one, and I think the Commanders were like, whoa, he's here. We go get him, and just the defense's belief in him, Quinn's belief in him, and all of that. I think he's going to be good. But Jaylen Lane is just the name that just keeps popping up. Like, wow, wow, wow. Did you see this? Did you see that? And it's showing through. And you just get excited to what he can be in Cliff Kingsbury's offense.
Absolutely. I misspoke on last episode. He ran like a 4.34 40, had 11.1 broad jump and then a 40, I think a 40 or 41-inch vertical, which
Yeah.
just speaks to the actual explosiveness of Jaylen Lane, and that's somebody I highlighted early on in the process. So from what I'm receiving from you, you do think that he's going to be used possibly early on in the season,
I do.
not
And
just on special teams.
no, I think he's going to see a role in the offense. Now
Okay.
you have your Michael Gallups, you have your Noah Browns, you have your Debo's who are going to be outside the bigger possession receivers. But I think he's going to get some burn, and
Mm,
that does not spell the end for Luke McCaffrey. So
right.
don't go there either. But there's going to be ways to put all of these guys on the field because we're going to see Debo line up in the backfield. That's coming. So that means you need someone else out there. Because you imagine Jaylen Lane coming by on a jet motion with Debo, Brian Smith with Jaden Daniels with the ball. That's a lot of stuff that can happen out of those sort of sets. So when I go this week, I will be interested to see how much offensive work he's getting
Mm.
because I do think he can have that De'Ami Brown sort of second half season run that we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. And speed does not grow on trees,
Not
so
at
to
all.
speak. Next question for you. One of the darlings of the draft class is the seventh rounder, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. And what's going to go on with that running back room? I know that you're going to be in there next week, but what would you say? How do you think the running back room is going to shape out early on in the season?
Now they're going to Ryan Robinson should be the starter. Eckler's still going to be a third down back. Now you're on to running back number three. That's going to be where the fun starts.
Mm,
And they like some. They really like him. Of course, about being there in the seventh round. I have heard that if he did not get drafted, that was the first person they were calling.
okay.
Carlin Vickers ended up being that person, the first one, but
Okay.
I think it was going to be him. He has a lot of ability, and the thing he's going to have over some of these other running backs, he's going to be fresh because he didn't really play. He didn't play last year, so he's going to have an explosiveness, and his body's just going to be fresher. So I do think he's going to find his way onto the opening 53 because I don't think once the film gets out, you can let him go to practice squad because somebody will take him up.
Hmm.
So I think he's going to find a way on that squad. Now, what that means for others, now that's a whole nother story. But I think that'll play itself out. But I think he's going to find his way on the initial 53. I think there's no other way to have him around and keep him because if he goes to practice squad, somebody will take him.
Yeah, and we saw with Rodriguez last season where he was kind of on and off throughout the whole season, right? Just kind of using
Right.
him as that one ace up your sleeve, so to speak. Last question for you. They kind of talked about the five starting offensive line in OTAs. Obviously, no jersey, no pads. There's really not much physical aspect going on in OTAs. But what is your prediction for the starting five? I believe Allegretti was starting at right guard. They had Connerly at right tackle, Trent Scott at left tackle because Tunsil's not there, and I think Brandon Coleman at left guard, obviously with Badass at center. Do you think that's going to be the starting five to open the season?
That probably will, with the exception of Connerly. Depending on how he looks at right tackle, you might not start him there at on the first game of the season. But
Okay.
I think the initial goal is to put him there. They have moved Coleman inside, which everybody wanted. He's going to do good there, smaller area, very physical guy. He can still move. That'll help on pulling situations while Cosme's going to be out. Biotis will be there. Thompson will be there. Those are locks. So Connolly would be. They're hoping that he gets to that route, but he could start as the swing tackle, just be there to kind of be there.
Okay.
But once he gets truly comfortable at right tackle, then I think he'll go there. But he's really learning it because he's only really played on the left. So it's different sets, different things. But that would be the dream starting five would be those five going across.
Yeah, we talked to David Harrison, I think like a month or so ago, and he brought up how last season they had the rotation with Brandon Coleman and Cornelius Lucas at left tackle, and maybe we see something similar with right tackle with maybe possibly like Wiley or
Mhm.
even Trent Scott, because Trent Scott did not do a bad job last
Oh,
season.
Trent Scott was very underrated.
Yeah.
Like his athleticism. I mean, you saw him on the touchdown catch, but he played well. And then there was times where Trent came and played inside too.
Yeah.
He played guard for a game. I'm trying
And
to
the
think of the
Lions
game.
game.
Yeah, and he had to come in and play guard. And it was fine. And so Trent Scott is going to make the team. But they could do it that alternating because remember Coleman would play a series and then they would come back with Trent Scott or unite. That could be a rotation as well on the right with Wiley because Wiley played way better than he did last year. Part of that has to do with your guard is playing better too because that right guard was bad last season, and so now you have a better right guard. Now it's better for him at right tackle, but he's getting up in age, and he had a lot of injuries that he played through. So you may give Wiley the start just to get things rolling, and you kind of work Connolly in. But the goal is to have Connolly on the field as soon as possible. But that you can't take Tunsil off, so
Yeah.
that would be the only other place that Connolly can go.
Absolutely. I can't thank you enough, Felix, for joining us this Sunday. I hope you have a great week this week at OTAs. Make sure you're a sponge and be able to pick up as much as you possibly can. I know they're throwing a lot at you, and maybe not everything is going to be stabilized. They're just a feeling out phase, right? But
Right.
before you get out of here, just like to plug your social media handle and your show, brother.
Yeah, you can find me on Blessed Commander on X and Blue Sky and on Instagram as well. My content will be coming back July 1. You can look for that on YouTube. You can look at on all social medias, and that shows different branding, and you'll be seeing it pretty soon. But check it out, and I'm ready to roll season 2025.
Yeah, we cannot wait. Felix, have a great Sunday, sir. I can't
Yes,
thank you
sir.
enough.
Appreciate it.
No problem. Have a good one, fellas.
You too, brother. All right, everybody. We just talked to Felix Trammell. Always appreciate Felix's time. What's up, Paul?
What's going on?
It seems like every time that we have an episode now, it's like one of you guys is not here. Hopefully, Reed will show his ugly mug here in a minute.
Right.
Can't tell you like that JP tweet still irks me. The one that he commented on last
Oh,
night.
yes.
Absolutely ridiculous. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the JP Finley's tweet about the balloon that he was blowing up for his daughters and the weird part of it. And yeah, he's
The
a
magic
nutcase.
mushroom sprinkler.
Yeah, but that being said, I know you weren't here last Sunday. I didn't really talk about it because I wanted you to enjoy your Sunday. You were out golfing. You went to Glade
I was gonna say,
Valley.
what did I do last Sunday?
Yeah, how was it, man?
It was nice. Just first time getting back out there since probably the last time I played with you. Honestly, I can't really think. Last time I played might have been at Glade Valley with you, Donnie, and B Mart. So,
Oh yeah,
but yeah, it was definitely good to get back out there.
it was a beautiful day for it.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day. It was three of us, and we got paired up with like a dude that was a kind of like a solo guy. And
I hate when that
like,
happens.
yeah, I was kind of like, especially because I only knew like one of the people that was like I was going with. It was Courtney's friend's husband. I guess either one of his coworkers or ex coworkers, and then we got paired up with the other dude, young dude, like 27-year-old. And he was actually a beast. I was surprised. He's like, yeah, I've been playing golf since I was like 10 years old.
If you're playing solo on a course, typically,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you're solo on a course and you're really bad, you're gonna say, "Don't pair me up with anybody." Like
Right,
I'll
right.
find one. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
if you're welcoming that means you're welcoming the challenge of going against other people. You know, that
Exactly.
guy
Nah,
obviously
he
can
was
swing.
he was actually pretty decent. He was cranking the ball like 300 plus yards on a drive, and the dude was probably, like I said, he was 27. He was probably like Pat size, and he was just cranking
Oh,
them
yeah.
Johnson. But yeah, it was a good time. I'm gonna hopefully get back out there in a couple weeks again, and yeah, the goal is to play at least like 5 to 6 times this year, so I can keep getting marginally better every time I get out there.
My man, and I know that as soon as you have kids, your golf time just diminishes. My buddy Donnie still was playing golf with his when his newborn baby was around. I was like, dude, you're insane, because there's no way I would be able to get away with that. Now
Yeah.
we are joined by our next guest, good friend of us, Mr. Wole, if you guys know, from Urban Sports Scene that we've known for quite some time. He's the quarterback whisperer himself. What's up, Wole? Thanks for joining us, man.
What's up? What's going on, y'all?
Yo.
How you guys doing?
We're doing great, man. Now that you're here, you look a lot better than Reed. No diddy about that. But I wanted to ask you how your Sunday's going, how your summer's going, and I wanted to first off,
Yeah.
what is right now your biggest takeaway from the Commanders? Either it being a headline, biggest issue, biggest excitement. What is it?
Issue? There's no issue because so early. Headline, because I don't get to this stuff until the training camp. That's when I feel like whenever. I would say biggest storyline. If I had to say a storyline for going into the season, it would be like acquiring Jeremy Tunsil. I think that's so important to have a left tackle because we're used to this fan base is so used to having a dominant left tackle over the years. Since I've been a fan of this team, since Jim Lachey to Chris Samuels, Trent Williams, and now Ray Brown back then. And
No
now
Charles Leno?
no, we're not doing that. Nice. Well, so you know what? I this is what I told the fan base. I think, and I was guilty of it. And even I'm like, sometimes when you're so blessed with greatness, when someone's just good, they look sorry. You know what I mean? Like, and I felt like Leno was good. Like, he was solid. He wasn't horrible. He was solid. But when you're used to Trent Williams, you can't really follow that up. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a thing. Because if you ask another team having a Charles Leno, they'll be like, oh, he's good. But we're in a different breed. Like, when you have Chris Samuels, then a Trent Williams, it's like, dude, you don't measure up.
No, you're absolutely right because like it almost goes. I've talked about this before, where it's like some teams just have certain positions figured out. Like the Bengals, for instance, you can go back. They just produce wide receivers. They're able to draft them. They blow up. Washington, it's definitely left tackles. And like Green Bay, you could say they've been blessed with quarterbacks, right? They don't have that issue.
Exactly.
Right? And like with Leno, it was almost like we were so used to the bad cop way of investigating, of just, going into the rough guys, roughing them up, trying to get answers out of them, where Leno was more like a good cop. And he didn't have that. And so it was kind of a drop off for us and not used to it in a way. But he, like you said, he wasn't horrible. But like we were just so frustrated as a fan base. We were looking for anything.
It's the same thing with even Morgan Moses. Like we kind of shitted on Morgan Moses, and I'm like, nah, he was really good. You know what I mean? Like he was pretty good. It's just you're used to something. Like you're used to having great tackle play, a really good tackle play. Like John Jansen was good. He was a second rounder. Like you're just used to having that side of football taken care of. You know what I mean? We're not. Like guards are guards, and like we've had interchangeable guards, but when you tackle in Washington, you're like, yeah, we're straight. We don't gotta worry about that. Even in the bad, even when we were some shit, like we were garbage, like we still had tackles. You know what I mean? So I feel like, I think like Laramie Tunsil was big, just like because it kind of gets you back to the identity of this organization. Like it's always about having a guy who can block the blind side.
My man. And obviously you're from this urban sports scene. I just want to plug that again for you. But we answer fan questions to wrap up these shows. It's the last 30 minutes here. We got some submitted. This first one was from Wales, Commander, our boy Alid, obviously from the UK. His question was, Wole, you go first and then Hall will answer after. Okay. Do you think Jaylen Lane will mainly be a special teams guy, or can he earn that wide receiver 3 role with his speed and playmaking?
Three. I think he can definitely be 3. We'll see. Like Noah Brown's still on the roster. They like Noah Brown. Gallup is still a project. I don't think he even partakes so far. He hasn't partaken in OTAs yet. He's coming back. He just came back from retirement, so I'm not putting him on the list of like being wide receiver 3. I think so. Honestly, yeah. He has like the Terry McLaurin kind of background.
He does.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's background.
If you talk to Virginia Tech fans, they'll tell you that he was doing way more than he should have based on what the offensive coordinator was doing there. And obviously his quarterback was not the best and most accurate, but he is walking into a fantastic situation for that young man. Alid, I'll say he definitely will be a contributor on special teams, and he'll be a difference maker on special teams.
Agreed.
Offensively, you've heard them before kind of talk about the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, hypothetical talk, and they say it's out the window. It's like they do something based on what their position is asked to. And Jaylen Lane actually talked about this, Alid, a couple weeks ago, saying, I'm just here to do my role and be exceptional or great at it, right? And I think that with Jaylen Lane, his explosion and speed is something you can utilize is something that we don't have a crazy abundance of on offense currently, right? Because you think about it, we're a lot like tough guys, contested catches, tall, lanky, but like with Jaylen Lane, he offers that explosiveness. They'll find ways for him. I just think the wide receiver 3 role thing, it's going to be like a rotation based on what they want to do. I don't think it's going to be a solidified thing. Jaylen Lane's going to be starting every game. You're going to see him on every offensive snap in the slot. I don't think it's going to be that sort of scenario. I think it's going to be based on what the defense is offering you, and they'll be able to move. But I will say this. I loved him in pre-draft. I talked about him on the radio. I said there's 2, Jalen Noel and Jaylin Lane. Those are the 2 guys that brought up at wide receiver. And I can't tell you how excited I was to get him. And the special teams ability is what's really going to offer him the ability to show what he can do with the ball in his hands. What do you think, Hall?
Yeah, you guys definitely made great points. A lot of the points I was going to make. I guess it depends how you're looking at the wide receiver 3. Like, are you looking at it like depth chart wise? Then I don't think he'll be wide receiver 3 because you got Terry, Debo. Like Wole said, they like Noah Brown still. They brought him back for a reason. You still got Luke McCaffrey, who I think it'll be Luke McCaffrey and Jaylen Lane kind of battling out for that wide receiver 4 spot on the depth chart. But if you're just looking at it from Terry's on the outside, Noah Brown or Debo, whoever it is on the outside, and then the slot receiver is the wide receiver 3, if you want to call it that, then I do think just based off of how much the coaching staff liked him when they drafted him, how much they preach competition, and if he competes and puts in the work to be that wide receiver 3 and get on the field and get touches and get some run, then I definitely think that this coaching staff is not going to hesitate to put him on the field if he's ready and puts in the work to be that dude. And like you said, he offers something that pretty much none of the other receivers on the roster have, which is speed. And
well, Terry ran a 4.3.
I know, but I'm just saying, like,
yeah, I got you.
Terry's 4.3 is way different than what
That's fair.
Jaylen Lane's 4.3. You know what I'm saying? So I do think that like Felix was talking about, that De'Ami Brown type of role for the offense is kind of up in the air, and I do think that Jaylen Lane will be the guy that fills that role, as well as kind of that gadget guy who can run the reverses, the jet sweeps, and kind of that Olamide Zaccheaus type of role as well. So I do think that they have a role for him carved out in the offense early on, and it's just going to take reps and progression to get him fully invested into the offense. But I do think by midseason, end of the season, you're going to see a whole lot of Jeremy Lane out on the field.
Yeah, but it's because, like, if you watch on Twitter, like, you'll hear people talk about Jaylen Lane, hearing great things about him. There'll be others like Bobby Gold who will come out and say, well, I've heard that he's extremely raw. And the one area you could say you could possibly be extremely raw in is route running. It's not something that typically anybody comes into the league is very, very good at, minus a handful of guys.
Especially coming from a Virginia Tech
yeah,
offense.
like Ohio
State. It's not really like a nuanced offense.
Right. Like if you're coming from Ohio State, you're going to be a fantastic route runner, like Emeka Egbuka, right, for example, where Jaylen Lane probably has to take that step. So maybe, Aled, that's where the hesitancy is of them actually having him start right away at wide receiver. But like I said, that's where special teams, you kind of force your way into it.
Well, you also got to think about if he is going to fill that De'Ami role. De'Ami wasn't running the whole route tree anyway. He was running the deep stuff.
He was.
I mean,
he got better at it. I felt
he
like
got better, but I'm just saying, like, initially it was
initially in his career,
he
was not.
The deep crosses, the go routes, stuff like that, the screens.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that, like, when De'Ami situations, like Cliff gave De'Ami more responsibility in the route tree than other coaches did. They just used him as, like, the go deep, like the go route. You know what I mean? Right. The deep digs. Like Cliff used him differently. I do think that, and I also think like Cliff's offense will be tailored to somebody like Lane. Like, he won't have to, like, run the whole complete route tree. It can be little by little to a point where he's learning and he's gaining confidence and he's be able to add certain things to the toolbox, right? So I just feel like it'll be a process more than anything. But I agree. If you watch the kid on tape, and what I got to see on tape, I didn't watch Virginia Tech games like that, but the stuff that I saw, like highlights or whatever, what I liked about him is that he fits the culture. What I mean by that is he's not just a fast dude, he's a physical dude too. Like, he's not scared to smoke. If you watch him, like, he's cool with contact. And I think that's very important. Like, the guys they have on this team, like, if you look at the body of work, look at the character traits, Terry's not scared of contact. We all know Debo ain't scared of no contact, and this kid ain't scared of contact, even with the 4.3 speed, in which, usually when you see a guy who runs a 4.3, you're like, oh, he don't want to get touched. Oh, this dude about to smoke. So that's what I like about him.
Yeah, and if you're operating in the middle of the field, Wole, we all know this, you have to be able to be taking those hits. And I think that's one thing that De'Ami was kind of hesitant early on in his career, that obviously later on he worked himself into being able to have more of a responsibility, right? And I think with Jaylen Lane, if you go back to that Terry McLaurin screen pass he took for a touchdown, that's similarly what you can expect from Jaylen Lane. He is very good with vision and following behind blockers on these kind of plays, and with that speed and explosion, he can separate. Now, going to our next question from the Colonel, that was a great one, Aled. Thank you. The Colonel asks, Wole, in the immortal words of George W. Bush, are we misunderestimating the New York Giants this year? Personally, I think they've built a daunting offense with the addition of Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart, but their defense is even scarier with the addition of Abdul Carter. Might the Giants be a surprise dark horse in the NFC East?
I'm going to say this the way I can only say it. I think their offense is trash. But I do think I think their defense is going to be a problem, though. Like, so on that side of the ball, I think their defense is going to be an issue. I think even on Thibodeau, like, who some would say is an underachiever, but he's flash. But I do think with the addition of Carter, you got Brian Burns, like, it's going to make him better. It almost reminds me of the Giants squad that won the Super Bowl, where they just rotated dudes on the line. They didn't really have a position. Like, you know what I mean? You had OC, like, you had OC inside. You know what I mean? Like, they can rotate. And they can rotate pass rushers. So I just think the Giants defense, even cornerback play, isn't horrible. I think the Giants defense as a whole, because of that pass rush, it's going to make their overall defense 10 times better. So I think it's going to be hard for teams to to score. So in that element, I would say they've been kind of looked like they've been underrated in that element of it. But I'll say as a whole, they still got a lot of work on offense. I know Malik Neighbors is a dog, but in quarterback play, I mean, Russell Wilson hasn't been Russell Wilson in years. You know what I mean? I call him Sierra's husband. Sierra's husband hasn't been that dude in a long, long time. And you know, Jameis is just funny. I love Jameis' sense of humor. And you're talking about putting a rookie quarterback out there to be productive against in this division. To me, now is one of the tougher divisions in football. I don't think that the Giants' offense is going to be the hindrance of that team doing special things. But their defense is going to be a problem. I'm not going to lie about that. Their defense will be a serious problem.
Yeah, everything starts in the trenches, and we know that all too well here in Washington. Colonel, I think that the Giants are going to go as far as their offensive line does. If they're able to keep the quarterback position upright, because then you have to talk about the identity of the football team. Which quarterback is going to be getting that starting role? What identity is that offense going to take? And so maybe if they have that issue with offensive line protecting or being able to run the football, then things could kind of spiral for them, right? And that's where my issue is. We are underestimating them just because, like, we're looking for, when we think about the fourth in our division, we almost have to look at it as how the NFC North was last year. Even though they're fourth, is there really that much of a separation? And look, they can catch fire. A lot of people were talking about Washington this time last year, saying there's no way they're gonna be picking top 5 again, top 10. We blew the doors off of those expectations. So I'm not going to put the Giants saying that they are without a doubt going to be picking top 10, but I do think it's all based on their offensive line. As much as they have added Abdul Carter and others, I do think on how much of time of possession they're going to actually be able to control and extend drives is going to be their key to success, so to speak.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of just how you look at it, because this is probably the most talented roster that Brian Daboll's had since he started coaching the New York Giants.
Right.
And like you guys talked about, the defense is probably going to be lights out. I do think the only thing that might kind of hinder their defense is if their offense is bad to like just below average, like everyone thinks they're going to be. That means they're probably having a lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of quick drives, maybe probably turning the ball over, which I'm not going to say they're turning the ball over a lot, because Russell Wilson's never been a turnover machine, except for maybe that 1 year with the Denver with Nathaniel Hackett. But Russell Wilson's never been a turnover machine. So could there be a lot of sacks? Could there be a lot of quick drives, which is going to put the defense back on the field a lot? And then eventually your defense, as good as
we know that all too well.
Yes, as good as the defense can be on paper, eventually you're going to get tired. So I do think that the defense in probably the first quarter of games, second quarter of games, first half of the season, yes, I do think there'll be a top 10 to 12 defense, maybe even higher than that. But it's going to come down to, like you said, the offensive line and the quarterback play. And I like Neighbors. I like Tracy as a running back as well.
Yeah.
But I just think that they didn't do a lot to upgrade the offensive line, and we already know kind of what you're going to get out of Russell Wilson at this point in his career. So if they can rely on the running game and the defense, then we might be underestimating them. But at the same time, you can't just run the ball the entire game. You got to throw the ball at some point in time. And I do think that's when, outside of Malik Neighbors, they don't really have weapons on the outside. So, I mean, I can see them being better than last year, but, I mean, 6 wins is going to be better than last year for them. So I can see them like a 6 or 7 win team.
Yeah, and obviously they added the white boy Scatabo to their backfield as well. Can't forget about him if something were to happen to Tracy. Now, we'll lay the next question from the Colonel before we move to the Discord. He asks, among our sophomore players, i.e. Ben Sinnott, Luke McCaffrey, Mikey Sammerstill, Jordan McGee, and Dominic Hampton, etc., who do you expect to make the biggest impact this year? Personally, I hope to see Ben Sinnott and Jordan McGee become impact players on each side of the ball. What are your thoughts?
We're not including Jaden, right? We're not including Jaden.
Yeah, he's in his own realm.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I want to take a softball. I'm biased, man. Y'all you put me on a biased spot. I'm gonna put Mikey
Yeah.
I'm going to say Mikey. I think Mikey.
Background with Wole, he's a Michigan fan like Wole.
Yes, sir.
I'm a Michigan fan. I think Mikey, just because Mikey showed so much flexibility in terms, everyone had Mikey deemed as a nickel corner, but he showed that he can play outside as well, and they want to kick him back into nickel. So I just think that the versatility of Mikey's going to take him to the next level for this defense. I think he's going to gain more confidence. Obviously, when you're on the outside, you're seeing a lot of dogs. You're seeing they had to see A.J. Brown. You had to see Devontae Smith. So he had to see a lot of guys who were on the he got to go against Jamar Chase too as well. So he's gotten to see some of the elite wide receivers on the outside. Now he's going to go on the inside. And typically, again, you're going to see number one receiver is going to slide into the inside. Like we've seen CeeDee Lamb do it all the time in Dallas. So he's going to still see he's still going to have some guys in the inside, but I just think the versatility, like now you can do a lot of things with them, knowing that you have confidence in him to be outside, and also he can play inside. I think that's going to make him 10 times better rather than having a corner that you know that is slated outside. You have way more flexibility with them now to a point where, because of Amos, now you can scheme up things to have Mikey inside, outside. It's just, I think that's going to make him a better football player.
Yeah, all based on what the offense provides for you. That flexibility is something that is worth more than gold. Personally, for me, Colonel, I'm going to include somebody here that you didn't include in the question, and I think the guy who's going to make the biggest impact or jump is Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton, obviously having his first offseason of being fully healthy, being able to come in guns blazing, ready to go, but also because they didn't add anything at the end, which I think hints a lot. Because Joe Whitt in his presser specifically talked about Daron Payne and how great he looked and what he's done being a silent assassin type leader where he's not overly vocal, but he's just doing what he needs to do. I think Joe Whitt, that was almost a Freudian slip of saying that Daron Payne might actually line up on the outside. And when you watch Johnny Newton in college, he was incredibly quick into the backfield. Very violent hands, somebody who was disruptive. I nicknamed him John McClain just because whatever the offense wanted to do, he was disrupting it. He was an issue clogging up there, getting after the quarterback and getting after the rusher. Johnny Newton could very well play on the outside as well, based on his body size, because he is a smaller type DT, but he's very quick, got the violent hands, and he actually could be an issue for a left tackle that is possibly thinner, right? Like maybe not somebody like I know like the Fuagas and the others of the world in the NFL, but I think that he's somebody that you could use on the outside at times, and I think that's what Joe Whitt and company are going to bank on. And with the full offseason of being healthy, I think Johnny Newton could make a big step this season. What about you, Hall?
Yeah, that's a good one. Fully healthy offseason as opposed to last year, so second year in the system.
Yep.
So definitely going to be a good one. I'll go with someone that he did name, and I think it's going to be Jordan McGee. I think they had a lot of high hopes for him last year. I think I heard Joe Whitt say that they already had like packages last year carved out for him.
Yep.
But he got injured, obviously. So they
He said
take those
12.
out.
He said the 12 personnel package.
Exactly. They want to go when 12 personnel. They want to go 3 linebacker sets with him, Bobby Wagner, and Louisville on the field. So I definitely think that. And even when he came back last year after the injury, you could kind of see like kind of the potential of, okay, he definitely has the potential to be that dude in the middle or on the outside going forward. And I just think that, like I said, another year in the system, a fully healthy offseason. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be probably attached to Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu's hip all throughout the summer. So I do think that Jordan McGee, on top of the packages they already have for him, I think is going to take that next step and become the linebacker that we all thought he was going to be last year before he got injured.
They are in love with him. Like I know this from last year's training camp. Not just like, I think that's they are in love with him.
Yep.
They believe he can be all pro worthy type of linebacker. So he is, and he was already following Bobby last year. You know what I mean? Prior to the injury or whatever, and still obviously following and learning from Bobby Wagner. So yeah, that's a perfect one. That's a good one. I do expect big things from him.
And I know Joe Whitt even talked about Kane Medrano, talking about is he like Frankie or is he more like Jeremy Chin, and being utilized as possibly like an extra safety in a rotation or being used as the blitzing linebacker. I'll tell you right now, he back up to Frankie without a doubt. The dude is a heat-seeking missile when rushing the quarterback, and I feel really comfortable with him in that kind of realm, in that role, right? More so than being the last line of defense, because as a safety, you got to be able to tackle, and that's one area Kane Medrano has to get better in. But I trust Ken Norton and being able to do that. Now, going to the Discord, Wole, this question from Tim Towner. 91 days until week 1 at home versus the Giants, which brings Kerrigan to mind. He was never a huge sack guy like Reed, but usually got close to 10 a year, if not more. So the question is, who will lead the team in sacks this year, and will they get 10 or more?
Oh, I think so. Oh, that's a tough one. I think if anybody's gonna get 10 sacks, it would be Frankie Louvu. I think that would be the guy who get 10 sacks. I think it'll be sacked by committee, though. I don't think it's still a question for me too as well. Won't even lie to you. But
that's what Felix said before, Wole.
Yeah. I believe it'll be a sack by committee. You may get some guys at 7, 8-ish. You know what I mean? I think that'll be the max, but I think it'll be sacks by committee. And that's not like I have my questions, so I'm not gonna act like I don't have my questions. But I think if it was going to go the right way, I'm going to be optimistic. If it's going to go the right way, I would say it'll be sacked by committee.
My man. And that's probably the smartest way to go about it. I wish Hall had some more lighting because it's getting dark in that room there. What I'll say is I think it could be Daron Payne, just based on how they're talking about him in the offseason and how they could utilize him. Obviously, without Jonathan Allen, the rotation that they do have, I think Daron Payne obviously fits into that role, but it'd be hard for Daron to kind of replicate his production from previous years where he did have 10 sacks in that contract year, right? But if I'm going to say anybody, if we're going to DNs, I think it could be, I'm going to give you 2. I think it could be Jaylin Holmes, who came from the Jets last season. We scooped him up when they tried to put him on the practice squad. He proved for us. I think he had a couple sacks. But also Dorrance Armstrong. We're expecting more out of Dorrance Armstrong, who they brought in from Dallas last year. And maybe that's somebody that could get in the realm. I don't expect them to get 10-plus sacks because a lot like Wole and Felix said, I think that rotation is what the strength of the team is. And it's not necessarily 1 or 2 individuals. It's the fact that everybody can be productive in a sense. And so if I'm going to put money on anything, I would say Daron Payne, Jaylin Holmes, or Dorrance Armstrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't, like you guys said, I don't think anyone, I'll say this. If anyone does get to 10, I think it could be 2 guys. It can either be Dorrance Armstrong, who I think he had 5 last year, but he was injured a lot of the year. And then you saw at the end of the year, kind of like Jordan McGee, at the end of the year, he kind of came back, was fully healthy. You saw, okay, he has the potential to kind of be that guy. I see why Dan Quinn and Joe Whitt brought him over from Dallas to kind of be the starter for on the outside for us. And he led the team in pressures last year. So we all know like pressures can easily turn into sacks if you have the right luck. So I could see if anyone, it could be Dorrance Armstrong, but I can maybe see him maxing out at like maybe 8.5 sacks, something like that. And I think the other guy that they're really high on, they really like a lot, is Javonte Jean-Baptiste.
I like him.
Who was also injured last year, but you could also kind of see when he was on the field, he had that pass rush ability. But again, I don't think he has the potential to be a double-digit 10-sack guy. But I could definitely see him maybe if he's fully healthy all year, getting like 6 or 7 and maybe being second or third on the team in pressures. So, yeah, I think it'll be a sack by committee like you guys said. But at the same time, this time last year we were questioning who's going to be the pass rush guys. And
It's fair.
Dante Fowler out of nowhere came out with, what was it, like 11.5 or whatever it was. Yeah. So I don't really see like a Dante Fowler on this team, which is like weird to say because Dante Fowler's like not even really like that type of dude. But yeah, I could definitely see maybe seeing it being like a Dorrance Armstrong or maybe Javonte Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah, and obviously being able to add the group of corners that they do have, being able to suffocate in the back end would possibly be able to pay dividends for guys like Javonte.
That Ryan Kerrigan type of sacks where
exactly
relentless pass rush, and eventually they held up on the back end. Okay, we got the quarterback now.
Right, and which is something that Washington hasn't had in a very, very long time, being able to solidify the back end. Now, the next question from Tim Towner, I feel attacked with this one, Wole. His question is, as of today, what age do you consider to be old? Note this changes as you get older, and he's referring to the Commanders uploading the video on X and social media asking the players what is old.
Bobby,
and they pointed to Jeremy Reeves and others. But what do you think, Wole?
I'm gonna get attacked. I'm 44. I'm so.
You don't
old.
look 44, Wole.
Appreciate you. In football age, old is it's all about position because quarterbacks can play like 35 and they're not really old anymore. I would say, well, these young dudes are something else. So I would say if I had to go to a young person's mind, I would say 33 is old nowadays, which is wild to me.
Dope.
which is wild to me in football. Which is wild to me. But I could, the way that like if you listen watching that video, 'cause I saw the video too. I'm like, yeah, 33 is definitely older than them. And I coach basketball, and I see these kids and what they refer to as old. So yeah, I would say like 33 is old, which is terrible.
Yeah, if you ask some young kids, they'll say 25 is old.
Yeah, they will. Once you hit 30, that's real. Honestly, I'll be honest with you. Once you hit 30, that's deemed old nowadays, especially in sports, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I can understand because I was definitely that guy when I was young, saying that 30-year-olds are old.
Exactly.
I don't really, I'm not really sure because in my personal, like with football is different because of the violence of it. Being old is kind of me being 35. I'm damaged goods at this point, walking with a limp. But I'll say that with football, whatever age Aaron Rodgers is, that's what's
He's
old.
about to be 42 this year during the season. So
yeah, Tom Brady Tom Brady was quote unquote supposed to be old. He didn't look old.
Old and dusty to like these young dudes nowadays when you're in your 40s. Yeah, I mean, football, I would probably say like 33, 34, just because like the car crashes that you're in almost every single play outside of like the quarterback position.
Yeah.
But like in like real life terms, so yeah, I don't want to say an age and then offend anybody, but
right?
I would say like in old like real life, I would say maybe what you get in like your 60s. I guess that's like old because like everyone's like, oh, 40 is the new 30 and 50 is the new 40. So I'm just gonna keep going with that.
Yeah, it always changes. It changes every year, man.
Yeah, you shouldn't be worried about offending anybody. If you listen back to Reed's jokes last week, it was bad. Now the next question that we have, Wole, this last one, this is from Arch in our Discord. Do any of you have any projections for the season about a player or the team that you have in mind but aren't ready to vocalize? If so, can we hear them now? Don't worry, we will hold you to them.
All right, this is going to be a wild take, a wild one. I think Brian Robinson will get over 1,000 yards this year.
That is a really wild
combined or just strictly rushing?
I think I'll get 1,000 yards rushing.
I like
contract year, so anything's possible. But
yeah.
What about you, Hall?
Nah, I'm just joking. I will say Trey Amos has 3 interceptions this year and 14 pass breakups.
I love that.
All right, that's really good. I think that Reed's boy, Matt Gay, will lead the team in field goal percentage, or lead the league in field goal percentage.
I say lead the team. He's the only kicker.
I know. But I do think that Matt Gay is probably that guy. But if I'm being perfectly honest, it's really hard to be able to gauge where Washington is right now because of what they've added offensively with Jaylin Lane, obviously bringing back Noah Brown and others. But you don't know how everyone is going to be deployed because we can look at it and say, oh, you can use them a variety of ways. But when it comes down to the script of each game, you don't know how things are going to play out. So I'm not going to have crazy – I don't have crazy projections for the team. At this point –
Terry in for 1,000 yards. That's the only thing you can project.
Because, well, yeah. He'll roll out of bed. That's my boy. And get 1,000. But ultimately, what I feel to be the case is I don't – like at my old age now at 35 – like I'm not here in the business of projecting or saying these are my expectations for you guys. Like that's for the coaches to do. Let them do their thing. My only thing is I'm enjoying the show. Whatever the hell you produce, I'm with it, bro. I'm all about it because at this point I have nothing to complain about. We have success, we have some winning football, and let's see sustained success, of course, but I'm much more interested in getting W's and getting wins on the column much more so than individual stats. And obviously you could say the individual stats would actually help in being able to win some of those games, but we've seen before Washington have really good stats with players, and that's
why you're a Jalen Hurts fan.
Yeah. Yeah, stop.
You're a Jalen Hurts fan.
Yeah.
You're not worried about the stats as long as you get the dubs.
No, I agree with you. Like that's what my mindset is, and that's why I don't get into OTA talk. I don't get to like I may just obviously we're content creators, right? So we put up anything. But if you ask me personally, I'm like I don't really get into all the other stuff. For me, until training camp hits, or really even preseason, 'cause I like to see people compete and they act in some type of game. Like when somebody doesn't know you. Like I'm a believer in like when you're practicing against each other, I'm gonna understand your tendencies, right? So I'm going to know your tendencies. I'm going to be used to certain things. And if I know I can do this against you, it's going to be easy work for me, right? Regardless of how good you are, right? But when the opposition, when you're playing against an opposing team that doesn't know anything about you, they're lining up and they're trying to take you away. That gives me an idea, even forget like the overall team strategy, even the preseason game. But in terms of competition, the willing to compete and to beat your opponent, I can gain some knowledge out of that more than anything. You know what I mean? And I can see your potential, what you could be in that situation. And then I'm not talking about when you're practicing playing against like the 4th-string dudes. I'm just talking about it like when you're in the first 2 strings. I'm like, I can pretty much gauge a little bit of what you can be. So that's where I wait on. That's what I typically wait on. I don't like the other stuff. The other stuff I'm like, man, that's cool.
That's why
I
love those
good.
joint practices.
Yeah, I love the joint practices. I love it.
Everybody does. You know, that's the funny thing when you see people talk about it with joint practices. Like, yeah, dude, we've been saying for years that that's the best thing for this football team, being able to gauge where we truly are, right? And
Exactly.
Miami was a great joint practice for them to go against. And we kind of saw the glimpses of it early on the last season. But if I have to give one, Arch, I'll say this. I'll project that the offensive line and the running backs are going to be averaging 4.0 on the ground each touch this season. And last season it wasn't, because Jaden obviously tipped the scales. If you take Jaden away, it's kind of putrid. So I'll say that without Jaden's rushing, I think the running backs, the offensive line, they're going to average 4.0 through each touch on the ground. That's going to wrap us up for this show, boys. If you made it this far, you're a freaking champion. I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you, Deluxe. Thank you, Tim Towner, Colonel. Thank you, Aled. We appreciate you guys for your questions. Before we get out of here, Wole, would you like to plug your show one more time and your social media handle, sir?
All right, y'all can catch me on social. That's first off, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. You guys are dope. I always enjoy your show. I enjoy your chemistry. It's amazing. You know what I mean? Tell my other Mike, man, where you at, bro? Come on, bro.
I ask that question every week, man.
But yeah, you can catch me on X, Wole at Wole_USS. Wole spelled WOLE. We have the Urban Sports Scene podcast that we have shows every Tuesday at 7. We have I call it Commanders Friday, which is at 7 as well. And every once in a while we do like a post game show like for like certain events. Like today, like now we're doing the NBA Finals, so we're doing a post game show for the NBA Finals. But yeah, you can catch me on anywhere. You just go to my socials. You can catch me there, and just Urban Sports Scene. We have our own X account, just at Urban Sports Scene. That's on X, on Facebook, on IG. So you search it, you'll find it. Thank you. I appreciate you all.
I appreciate you for being able to come on and join us, man. I wasn't sure if Reed was going to be here or not. He was his grandmother-in-law is not feeling very well, so they've had to go see her, and he kind of let us know that he could possibly be late. But, you know, like in Reed fashion, just crickets, of course. But
he won't answer the group text until like Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, I know.
Well, prayers to his family, though. Prayers to his family.
Because he says he doesn't like disappointing people, and it's like, dude, you're like 30-something. Come on, man. We're just your. We don't care. Just let us know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not your father. You know, everything's good. But. Guys, I can't thank you enough for joining us. And early on, I was watching my son. He was in here with me, and so if there's a little bit of sound coming through and all that, that's what explains it. He was in here coloring, dropping things, coloring on our chair over there, which I have to talk to him about now. But I can't thank you guys enough for sticking with us. Watch us again possibly on Wednesday or Sunday next week. Can't thank you guys enough. I'm Kyle.
I'm Wole.
I'm Wole.
And we'll see you guys again next week. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.